But I tell you what I do practice. Let me see here. Let me tell you what I do practice. I follow what the Bible says. Let me show you why, and then I'm gonna show you how these signs connect to these signs from God that I'm connect. I'm gonna show you what I do follow, and it's none of those things. I follow the Torah. I follow the Old Testament and the laws that are given. I go. I don't do anything different. You see, I go just by what the Bible says. So let's see here. Let's look at um and why I believe that it's important to pay attention to these signs. Okay. Because for me, it's not hard to believe, okay? Because the Bible tells us that God knows the beginning. I'm sorry, God knows the end from the beginning, which means with God, things, even things are mathematical. Everything that God does, well, I don't know everything, but the things that we see that God does are based on math and things happening at the right time in the right order based on a certain amount of time passing. And in order to be able to for God to do that, he also has to be able to understand the numbers, the amount of days, you know, like for example, the number of days that it takes to make an eclipse, okay, where the moon turns to blood. The earth has to be positioned a certain way. Okay. Okay, understand what I'm saying. So, okay, let me 1 second. Let me get into this. Screens, you can pull up information, but if you hit the wrong button, it will take you somewhere where you don't want to be. You have to be a bit more careful. Okay. So Genesis chapter 1. And so 1 second here. Let's try this again. Okay. Now, there we go. This should pull up in a second. Genesis chapter 1. Now, the reason I look to signs, okay, I look for signs in the heavens, and I look for things that attach to those signs in the heavens, because, like for example, the 400-year prophecy. I'm sure, brother Israel, you're aware of the 400-year prophecy in Deuteronomy, chapter 28. No, I'm sorry, that's in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, verse 12 and 13. Well, where God warns Father Abraham that his descendants will go into a land that's not theirs, and there they will serve and be afflicted for 400 years. Okay. So you see for that prophecy to be valid, for God made that prophecy based on numbers. Okay. He made that prophecy, and so that number happened to be 400 years. 400 years. And guess who's been in America, who's been enslaved and oppressed for 400 years? Black Americans. From 1619 to 2019 was a fulfillment, at least in the regular calendar or the Gregorian calendar that most people use. Okay. But you see that 400 is a number. And so remember this, that also for God's Bible prophecies to come true, that he must plan ahead. He's doing some kind of math. God, Almighty God, Yahweh, is using numbers. So he already has added up the years, the time, the year he knew. So when our people went into slavery, he had to be using numbers, time, numbers, no matter how you look at it. All these things are numbers. When we look at the calendar, when we even with the Hebrew calendar, okay, God warned us with numbers. He said the days of 30, the Hebrew calendar days are 12 months of 30 days. 12 months of 30 days. Okay. And that's what we used during the flood. The Hebrew calendar, or the Hebrew or the Hebrew prophetic years, which are 12 months of 30 days. So you see, all those things are numbers. God created the earth in 6 days. On the seventh day, he rested. You see, so that stands for completion. Seven, okay, seven, and on that is the day of rest, the Sabbath. Okay, on the seventh day, from sundown on the Friday until sundown on Saturday. But you see, it's not just the sun going up, down, and coming back up. That time we're supposed to observe, but God is controlling the sun going up and down by using mathematical calculations. You see, and so that's why. So now let's look at another reason why. So I look for signs because guess what? God said to look for them. But let me ask you something. What would the signs, how important would they be if you couldn't attach them to any number or any Bible prophecy, particularly for the Israelites? Okay. How important, you know, we need something to attach it to. And so here it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, start there. God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to divide the day from night. Let them be for signs to mark seasons, days, and years. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, or the sun, he gave the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, the moon. And he also made the stars. Okay. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light to the earth and to rule over the day and over the night and to divide the light from the darkness. God saw it was good. Okay. And there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. And so verse 14 says right there. So why should we look at signs? Verse 14 shows us. Genesis chapter 1, because it says, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky. Okay, and let them be for signs to mark seasons, days, and years. Okay, let them be for signs to mark seasons, days, and years. Okay, and guess what? Guess what? Seasons, days, and years follow a predictable pattern, and all those patterns are based on math. All the patterns that we see from for in the United States, we have spring, summer, fall, and winter. And then it turns around and does it again. We can predict what day, we know the day that the spring begins. Okay, we know the day when fall begins. We know the position of the sun. You know why? Because numbers. We are using numbers. Why are we using numbers? because God does everything with numbers, even marks the seasons and the years. You see, so there's no harm in following numbers that God gave us. Okay, as long as they harmonize with what is reason. However, I've seen countless people use their own calculations and be wrong. Just be careful, is all I'm saying. People also calculate the fake rapture. Well, that's true too. People are doing that. But I don't, first of all, I don't believe in the rapture. So, I don't believe in that or the New Testament. Also, I follow the Old Testament. And the next thing, I'm not using any of my own calculations either. I only use the numbers that's already there. You see, I only use the numbers that's already there. So let me show you. This is why I believe strongly. Let me show you something. In the beginning of the year, okay, in the January of this year, I saw something that caught my eye, and I believed that it was a sign from God. And so I don't know if you can see this. So I don't want to cover my microphone. Hopefully you can see this without me covering it. I might have to. So Mason Neal, can let me know if you guys can hear me good, and I'm not covering up my microphone. Mason Neal, he was a schoolboy and he died suddenly. Now listen, I don't know why God chose him. What I'm about to tell you can be found in newspapers and in the news, the regular news. Okay, thank you. So Mason Neal was 11 years old and he died suddenly. It's heartbreaking. I know his family and his friends were heartbroken. I don't know why God took him. It was his time to go. But he was 11. He was age 11. And you see there, the day he passed away when he died was New Year's Day, 1-1. Can you see that on the paper? Those are two 11s because 1-1, those are two ones put together. There's another 11. Now, when I look, the boy was from, I'm sorry, I get it backwards. From Staxago in Caithness, Wick, Scotland. He's from Scotland, okay? The boy lived 4,322 days. Okay? If you add 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2, you see that equals 11. Can you see that? So there we have 3 11s in a row. And then right there, his mother said in the article, his mother said that he will be forever 11. Okay, forever 11. There's another 11 in this story. And then guess what time they called the police? This is not me making this up. I'm only using what's there. And I interpret the signs from what's already there, you see. And right there, they called the police at 11:10 a.m. when they found him. So it was 11:10. There's another 11. But if there's 3 ones there, so actually 3 ones could be 2 11s. You see how that could be possible? Where's my pointer at? Are you following? Please let me know, you guys, if you can follow what I'm saying. Who can you follow what I'm saying? So right there. So I'll use a straw for my pointer. So right there, Mason Neal called for the police 11:10 a.m. And then look, even his name, Mason Neal, there's 5 letters in his first name, and there's 4 letters in his second name. That's a 9, okay? That's 9. Why is that significant? Maybe not. Some people may see it, but you see, that's 9, and then you have all these 11s here. You think that really happened? by accident or God did this? How can all these 11s be by accident? Or this is by God, for it was God's time, and God, it was the young man, the young boy's time to pass. But God did it with all these 11 surrounding this. Okay? You see, and even I want to show you something else. So he lived, this kid lived to be four 4,322 days old. You see, 4,322 days old. If you multiply the 4 times 3 times 2 times 2, you get 48. Those are the number. The 48 is the number, the day of the April 8th, 2024 total solar eclipse that made an X over America. All these signs I keep finding, 11s. You see, only God could cause. Only God can cause that. I keep finding 48s. There's 40. So the numbers of days that this kid, if you add them, you get 11 again, which is a sign for judgment. 11 stands for God's judgment. It stands for chaos and disorder. That's what 11 stands for biblically. Why do that used 11? Because biblically you can trace 11 to situations that have happened where 11 has stood for those things. And so then you have a 9/11. That's a big warning. Remember what happened on 9/11 in September of 2001? Remember that the worst terrorist attack that the country has ever had happened on the 9/11. But if you multiply this kid's the number of days that he lived, 4 times 3 times 2 times 2, then you get 48. If I keep telling people 48 is the sign God is trying to tell us something. There's 48 states within the continental United States. The modern state of Israel was formed in 1948. And you see all these countries, these connections to 48 are connected to Bible prophecy. You see everything is math. Everything is math. Every time you have a birthday, it's math. You know how? Because 365 days pass between your last birthday and then the birthday that you have next. It's predictable. And then the next birthday is all time. You see, everything, the signs, the seasons, the way people read the stars, the way our ancestors were able to look at the stars and the moons to know the new months, to know the seasons, to look at the sun and all that. It's all mathematics. Even our life, when we're born, before we're born, it's math that dictates. The God's math that he put in place, most babies are in the mother's womb for an average of 9 months. For a baby that comes much earlier, that's a premature baby. How do we know? Because God's mathematics, his numbers that he gave us in the order of things, points to 9 months being the correct amount of time. And if a woman goes way over 9 months, she's late, a late pregnancy. But it's all, so no, because it's all numbers. The 9 months is numbers. The pregnancy is not numbers, 9 months. And everybody knows that because it's the numbers that God gave us. And if the pregnancy, it does not fit the 9 months or the average by either being too early of the baby being born or too late, it does not go with the math. So the doctors and the woman, the family, they know there's a problem. And if that baby doesn't go with the correct math, if a baby is born too soon, the baby, not always, some babies are born very premature and they live and they're healthy and they have no problems. But sometimes babies can be born too soon and have a lot of, be underdeveloped, have a lot of problems, health problems. And the odds are against them surviving. And it's not the time that we created. If you have a watch on, or if you have a cell phone, if you have a laptop or a computer, and you look and and you see the time, you see the time on there. We all look at the time. We look at the time so we know what to do, where to be, where we should meet somebody. We look at the time. And it's because what we do depends on time. But when you break it all down to its base core, what is time? Time is numbers. We all live by numbers, whether we know it or not. And if you look at it in the simplest way, we all live by numbers. Let me know, anybody, if I'm saying anything wrong here. Okay. And you see, this is not using so you see, just like what I did with the one with the boy with all these 11s, I didn't interpret anything. I didn't do anything mystical. I just used what was there, and I used math. You know why? Because God gave us math, because so many things that we have to do has numbers. And when people work and they get paid, they get paid. Yeah, they get paid a certain amount. They make an agreement. Normally, they make an agreement before they do whatever job or whatever work it is, and the boss agrees to pay them a certain amount for the certain amount of time you work. Those are numbers. The time you work is numbers. And the money that we get paid is numbers. Yeah, it's money, but to be right, that money has to be the numbers, the certain amount of numbers of money that you agreed to be paid, or it's not going to be right. So I'm very comfortable with numbers and using them, not adding to them, but using the numbers that God already put there, not making my own numbers, but looking at the numbers. And let me tell you something else. I want to say this too, because just in case there's people who may not know this, because all this is important. In fact, this is just as important as what I really came to show was, which was another sign from God. But let me tell you this, that there's sometimes people put limitations on God when God has no limitations. So God can use anything or anyone, any kind of way to do whatever he wants to do. And so the one part, the next thing that I want to go over, 1047. So the next time, I keep seeing 40. So never mind. So let's go to the book of Joel or Joel. And then I want to show one more thing about signs from God. This may not be the only places in the Bible or in the scriptures, but these are the two main ones that I use because it's well-rounded. In Genesis, we're looking at more of the beginning of time and the beginning of how the order that God put things in. And by the end, by Joel, the book of Joel, chapter 2, of the Old Testament, where it goes to the part where speaking of the end times. Well, guess what? Those are dictated by numbers too. And many things only God knows those times. You so being so telling what God puts out there is fine. Telling signs that God puts himself that you see in front of your own eyes is fine. It's only when people take things and they lie or say things that are not true and then they don't happen. Like there's been people even recently to predict the rapture, and people, all kinds of people believed it. People believed it. People quit their jobs, sold their houses, sold everything based on something that somebody said, and it didn't happen. And then he predicted it was going to come again. People believed it, and then it still didn't happen. You'll find no such foolishness with me because I don't believe in that foolishness. The only thing that I believe in is telling exactly what God put there, what's already there put by God. I don't add anything new. I don't add any of my a new interpretation. I only apply it to the biblical numbers of because when you read the Bible, something else that's very important to understand. There are patterns of numbers that repeat themselves in the Bible. And it's important to understand that because when God, if anybody does, I'll have, you know what? I'll do a live stream on that. That'll be a good one. Because when you read the Old Testament, for example, you'll see certain numbers used at certain times, and God is actually giving us a message with those numbers. Like 12, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 months in a year. 12 stands for order, divine order, okay? Divine order or government. And you see things, so it's important to find, because there's a lot of patterns where numbers repeat themselves for certain situations. And why? Because God is giving us a message like that. So, in other words, in my opinion, and it's and with evidence from the Bible and with evidence as well from from things that people happen to people now, that we should not put limitations on God and what he can do or how he'll communicate to us. Because let me ask you something, how if he's going to leave signs, let me show you. But how else will he communicate with us? He uses signs. And guess what? Even those signs that he's showing us has to do with numbers, because the time is a certain amount of numbers that God knows, that he allows to happen or puts together, and he causes them to happen at the time he wants them to, so that Bible prophecy is fulfilled, so that his word is fulfilled. And he can do it in uh and let me show you something else too, so people know how great God is, how people know that God, and many people can attest to this. Hello, KBD. Hello, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you saying hello. You're welcome, very welcome here. How are you doing? Let me know how you're doing. Welcome, welcome. So, it's good to see you, Sister D. So now, or KVD. So now, so Joel chapter 2, this will go into what I'm saying. So we know not to put limitations on God. So let me say this. I'll read it first, then I'll say it. That's what I'll do. I want to show you something. So my point for saying what I'm about to say is that with the signs that we've been seeing in the heavens, with the eclipses, the blood moons, the moon turning to blood, the sun being dark, as spoken of in the scripture, and all these other signs, the fireballs that are coming from the heavens now, the unusually large and it's a huge increase of fireballs since March of 2026. And it's been in America, over the world, many places over the world. We should not, we can expect God to do anything at any time now. Anything, because we're in deeply prophetic times. How do we know? By things that are dictated by numbers. Okay, but anyway, so Joel chapter 2, let's go. Now this speaks of the end times. Joel chapter 2, verse 28. It will happen afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Now this is God Yahweh. He will pour out his spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams, your young. You see right there. So guess what? God puts his spirit on people, which the Bible said he's going to do, and he's always done. God's always put his spirit on people, especially as Israelites, okay? And I'm an Israelite. When, okay, when he pours out his spirit on all flesh, sons and daughters will prophesy. That's saying right there that the gift of prophecy has not been done away with as of yet. The gift of prophecy has not been done away with, because this is an end times. This is an end time scripture. So it's very possible for people to prophesy, and not like the prophets. People are not to make new rules. People are not to change the laws and commandments and statutes or anything like that. But God can use people. He can show people things even now. And then if he's not showing things, how can he do this? Verse 30. No, verse 29. And start with 28 again. It will happen afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your young men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. So there's even going to, so see, those things are supernatural. Having supernatural dreams, people prophesying, young men will see visions. Those things are supernatural things. So you see, my friend, we can't limit God to just to doing things that we expect, because he communicates in supernatural ways. He does it now. You see, having visions, dreams, young men will have visions, and also on the servants and on the handmaids in those days, I will pour out my spirit. So if God pours out his spirit on people or places of spirit, anything can happen at any time. He can show them things, wonderful things. Okay, so it says, I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. So right there, these end time signs, the wonders in the heavens and the earth. But guess what? They're still dictated by time, the time that Almighty God sets up. And what is time? When you look at it, how it's organized, it's all organized by numbers. To truly understand God, you must understand that God does things by numbers. And that's how he does it. And that's how his prophecies become true. And that's how these signs, because guess what? He's using time, He's using a certain amount of numbers. God is using a certain amount of numbers that he dictated that will occur before the end times come, before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. Only he knows that time, but he said there'll be signs. He'll say to look for these things. Blood, fire. Is he talking about blood moons, the sky turning red? Fire. There'll be fire. Okay. It says, see, the signs and wonders will be in the heaven and in the earth. We can look for signs, end time signs to happen in heavens and on earth too. It speaks of this right here. And the sun, and so all these things will happen in a matter of time. When you look what time is, it's numbers. Numbers. Okay. And it will happen that whoever will call on Yahweh's name shall be saved. All numbers, all that's all the time. This time here, Yahweh, he knows all. He knows. Thank you for coming. Thank you, KVD. Thank you so much for coming. Have a good rest. I know you probably need rest. But knowing you, you'll probably exercise or something. But anyway, now what I may do is come back and do the one, because it's already been almost an hour. What I may do is do the one about this sign for America, the end time sign. I may do that at another time, because and I feel comfortable doing that because I'm glad, by you bringing out this Israel, it helped me to look, and maybe it can help people to understand not to put things in a box, that God is still a God of miracles. The Bible said that God does not change, and he will use miraculous things even in the end times. And guess what? For them to mean something, people must be able to see those signs and be able to interpret them, what they mean, or else the signs that he promised that he would show in the end times would mean absolutely nothing. And also, a person would have to understand not just the signs, but the times that we're living in, and be able to do what? The math to prove it. Everything's numbers. I feel now, I'm not saying you're wrong. We all have a choice of how we view things, how we view God, how we view signs or things like that. But I feel perfectly right and in harmony with God by using numbers, but only if he put them here. Only if he put them here. Because I don't do any of the occult. I don't believe in it. I do nothing of the occult. I summon. I don't do anything in spiritism. So I haven't done anything wrong or dabbled in anything to bring those types of things into my life. So you see, it leaves room though for God. It leaves room for God. And God is a God of numbers. Numbers. In other words, Israel, you have numbers on your life. I have numbers. God, because God put us here, he already knew. We knew nothing because we weren't born. But he did all those things by numbers, whether we know it or not. And what happens to us from this point onward will be based on numbers. Whatever number, whatever a time, a certain measurement of time with numbers, whatever it is, everything, the way the universe moves. And so, like I was warning people, that this total solar eclipse that made an X over America, and the blood moons that have been happening in order on biblical holidays that surround or have been surrounding President Trump. And then President Trump was born on a blood moon. The same day that President Trump born, there was a blood moon, and he was born 700 days before the modern state of Israel was formed. Come on, there's too many things. So these things, I look at it like common sense. God wants us to be wise. He wants us to have common sense. And so when you see these things, these patterns happening, we are to use common sense. And those common sense has nothing to do with spiritism or divination or anything else. Especially if you're living clean and you're not dabbling in any type of spiritism. But like I said, what are the chances? Now, so we know that black people, if I did done videos for anybody here who doesn't know, we know that black Americans are the true Israelites of the Bible. We are the children of God, the true children of God. And then so we know that the Bible prophecy in Genesis chapter 15 verses 12 and 13 says that Father Abraham, that his descendants would go to a land that's not theirs, a land that they did not know, and they will go there and serve for 400 years. So common sense, our people have been here 400 years. It was a big, what was it, the HR 40, that the mark the 400 years of Black Americans from 1619 to 2019 was marked by our government as being officially 400 years. And we fit the Bible. So are we to believe? So we put things together. We're the children of God. We're Israelites. Our people are the true people that descend from Father Abraham. And then it's been nationally known, even by the government, our 400 years was marked with celebrations. It was all over the news. It was plastered in magazines and newspapers. Common sense. Looking at the brains, using the brains, we can look and figure that there's something major, and that maybe we need to look at that 400-year Bible prophecy. And so I did another video of where I calculated how the 400 years, if you divide those 400 years that we were here from 1619 to 2019, if you divide them with 300 with Hebrew years, Hebrew prophetic years, that would bring us to 2024. Because many of us were looking for something big to happen in 2024. I mean, in 2019, because I was wondering, why didn't the eclipse happen if our 400 years were over? But evidently, using these numbers, you have to go back and look again. So, what I'll do, I'll finish this thing. I'll rename this after this live stream, and it'll be our talk about God and numbers and how he uses numbers. Let me show you something. I'll prove what I'm saying. When there's a scripture, you've probably seen it other Israel, in I think in Deuteronomy, that how do you know if somebody says something and it's from God? You know, because what they say comes true. And so many things that our people, even me, things that I said was going to happen have been happening. And I'm not using anything except evidence that God Himself gave to us. Excuse me for a second here. I'm just feel like a fish out of water. Let me show you something. Numbers. So that there is the fourth, for people who don't know, there's the 400-year prophecy. And take a look at it. In Genesis chapter, I've gone said it many times. In Genesis chapter 15, verses 12 and 13. And we're the Israelites. We know we put that together. We know we're the Israelites, and we know that we done it. It was a big thing when our 400 years was completed here. But something was missing. But something big did happen. COVID came after that. And was that sent by God? Was it a plague because and it affected all of us, our families and friends. It affected, it was awful. And that happened. But there was something missing. So I used numbers that God gave us, right? Because I was like, if we're the children of God and our 400 years ended officially in 2019, we need something else. And so then the total solar eclipse came in April the 8th, 2024, okay? There was a total solar eclipse where the sun used its shadow and God drew an X across America, an X, because he combined the 2017 and 2024 eclipses. And they made an X over Little Egypt in America. And but that X that is a tav in Hebrew, the X that the lines, the path of totality formed, the X stands for 400. Those are numbers. How can we ignore that our people have been in America 400 years? There was an X over America that was made by the sun, that only God could have done, and it's not a coincidence. And so we've done the 400 years from 2019, from 1619 to 2019. And then a few years later, we get an X that was made over America, which is an omen. Okay, the tav is an X. The X is Hebrew, is a tav. The tav is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. But that's still numbers. Why? Literally, because, one second. Why? Because it was significant, because this tav also stands for 400. And our people have been enslaved in this place in America and oppressed as well for 400 years. How can it be that so God is showing us these numbers? Now, I know that we're not supposed to make something out of nothing, but God doesn't want us to be fools. He speaks against foolishness. If we read Proverbs, God speaks of wisdom, and we should use wisdom. And wisdom will tell us that if Black Americans are the Israelites, and we did that 400 years, like the Bible said the Israelites would, in the land is not ours. And then in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, that verse says we would go to Egypt or go into slavery again in ships. It even predicted that our people would go in slavery in ships. We fit all those Bible prophecies. Numbers, because we're looking at numbers. So my friend, God does everything with numbers. everything is with, we shouldn't be afraid of the numbers only unless we're doing something wrong with them or lying or something. I'm just using the numbers that have been given to us by God and the numbers that that's all. I'm not making anything new. Let me tell you something. But that's not all. That X, the total solar eclipse made over America stood for 400, but it also stood for, it's an omen for God's judgment. Okay? And so we have, and so guess what? Let me show you something after this. I want to, and then, but not only does that tab that made an X over America, the X is the last Hebrew letter. It also stands for the end. I think I already said that, but so let me put that the end. I'll show you why I'm doing this in a second. So, but I've really used this pencil. Here, I'll use my professional pointer. But anyway, so guess what also happened in the week before the eclipse, okay? We had on that Friday, I believe that Friday before the eclipse, a big 4.8 earthquake that was felt in the tri-state area. And that area was New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. People all over those areas felt the earthquake. Why is that earthquake significant? Because that had the same date as the total solar eclipse that was coming up, 4/8. And that is the year. That's also the date that the sun made the X over America. Also, what was ironic, which is another number that matches these numbers, is that during that week before the eclipse, and at the time when there was the 4.8 earthquake, it marked the 400th year anniversary of New York, of the time that it was formed. At that time when that 4.8 earthquake hit, it was the 400th year of New York since it was formed or founded. So there we have another 400 connected to this eclipse, in addition to the solar eclipse itself standing for the number 400. So we had that 400. So let's put that to 400 years of in New York. I'll put that, I'll understand. These things must be looked at. And then when you look and put the whole picture together, you look at how numbers are what is opening up all these things to understanding by the numbers that God is giving us. We should not be afraid of them. Now, and then I'll put, there was a 4.8 earthquake in New York. New York. And it was kind of unusual. Okay. And then, but that's not all, because there were some 4.8 earthquakes in California too, in Western. So we had the 4.8 earthquakes. So let me put California too. We had those four. So what we're doing, so we're having all these numbers. Why is 4/8 important? Why is 4/8? The God keeps showing us. You see, God is showing us these numbers. Because I hate to say it this way, only a fool, if God keeps showing us something and we refuse to see it or we can't, it's not good. It's not good, because then it means either something is wrong with us and we're not able to see it, or either it means that we're wicked and God is blinding us from seeing it, or it means we don't want to see it. There's people who, we all know people like this. There's people on this earth that no matter what happens, they don't believe it. You can tell them something is right in front of them. Oh, I don't believe that. There's people like that. They don't want to believe it. I'm not saying that but those things happen. But we see a pattern of the 4-8, but then the eclipse on 4-8 marked. But there was something else that happened. I can't remember. There was something, a powerful earthquake that happened. Was it in Taiwan? I'll find it. Oh. Okay, look. It's something I picked up my phone to look at the hours, to find something. And it was 11:19, 911 backwards. Isn't that something? Is that also, is that something bad, or could it be that God is showing me this? Just like God, could God be showing certain people these things? Evidently, if in Joel chapter 2, where he says he's going to have end time signs, it would make sense that he would also have people that understand them. The Bible says that he would pour out his spirit in the last days on all flesh, and that that men and women, the son, and that we would prophesy, people would prophesy. We should not be shocked by any of this that's happening these days. And even the Bible prophecies are numbers. When you take it, the numbers, the time that God said something was going to happen are his numbers. And we think that we understand God, but we have really no idea the kind of math that he's using to be able to do these things that he's doing. It's an advanced math. I'm telling you now, the best mathematician cannot understand what God is doing. That is my belief. So now, I want to show you something else. So no. Let me show you this. So we have these numbers that are happening after our people have been in who we know now that people are waking up and realizing, people of all races, and including our race, we're realizing that the race known as Negroes or Black people are the true children of God. We're the children of Israel from the Bible. Our history's been hidden from us. We know that we're the ones who fit the Bible prophecy, and we know that right here. So look right here. So all these numbers we have surrounding this X over America, we've been here 400 years. The X, or the tab that was formed over America, stands for 400. And the Earth, the tab, the total solar eclipse that made the X over America also happened on 4/8/24. And then a few days before it happened, the total solar eclipse, we had a major 4.8 earthquake in New York, which was very unusual, and it was felt in the tri-state area. Ironically, at the same time, when there was New York had been formed in 400 years. At that time, there was a 4.8 earthquake. So right here is numbers. God is showing us something. We're matching numbers, what's happening in America, and you find right here this 4.8 total solar eclipse that made the X over America. The X is a tav in Hebrew, which is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It stands for 400. So you have a 48 and a 400 there. The 400 happened on 4/8/24. Then you have a 4/8 here in New York, in the New Jersey, Philadelphia tri-state area that felt that pretty strong earthquake for that area. And also at this time of the 4.8 earthquake, you have the 400 years that New York was formed. So you have 4/8, 400 there that matches. Then you have the 4/8/24, which is the date of the eclipse, that matches right there. God is showing us all these things through numbers. What have I made up? What have I done any wrong? Can anybody tell me that I've used anything else except for the numbers that God has given us himself? I got these numbers, the same numbers that were given to us, that you can look up in the newspapers, that you can look up on science sites, that you can look up certain sites that talk about space and things like that, that keep up with those things. You can look at all the stats. You can look at the earthquake records for that date. You can look up and we'll see that all this happened. And I'm not trying to be mean, but only a fool could see all these numbers matching Bible prophecy of the 400 years and not think that it means something. And then there was a series of 4.8 earthquakes in California around that time of the eclipse. But if you go earlier in the year of 2024, there was even some more 4.8 earthquakes. Too many of them to be an accident. There were too many 4.8 earthquakes to overlook. Numbers. So how else are we to understand these things except for numbers? You can understand these things, so we should not be afraid of numbers. Now, I understand if you don't feel comfortable using them, but my view is we should use the common sense that God gave us. And if God is kind enough, he doesn't have to give us any signs at all before the end times. Think about it. God does not have to give us any signs at all. He doesn't have to tell us anything. He doesn't have to warn us. God does not even have to tolerate human beings. If he wanted to, for our wickedness, he could eradicate us off the earth if he wanted to. But God was kind enough to set up ways, signs. You see, because in Joel chapter 2, it said that God, before the great and terrible day of the Lord, that it said God would show signs in the heavens and in the earth. So even though those signs, the total solar eclipses made the path of totality, made a shadow across the United States. The one that happened in 2017, there was a path of totality, which was a shadow that it made. And then in 2024, there was a path of totality, which was a shadow that the sun made of the United States of America. And they intersected, and it made an X, which is in Hebrew is a tav, which is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which stands for 400. If our people have been here in slavery from 1619 to 2019, we fulfilled that. The tav stands for God took and drew the X over America with the sun. And it stands for, it's an omen for God's judgment. It means the end. The end. But there is also another eclipse that happened in October of 2023, which also made a line across America. But it didn't go in that direction. It came up and if I'm doing this right, it went this way and it made an A. Well, I probably could have did that better, but it's an A right there. An A in the Hebrew letters is an Aleph. Okay. That's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So you see, the A in Hebrew letters is called an Aleph. And the path, so it took the 2024 total solar eclipse, the shadow that it drew across the United States, the God drew across and made that X over America, over little Egypt, where the Bible predicted that our people would go into slavery in ships in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. All these things are dictated by numbers. So anyway, so those three eclipses. So one other letter that it made was an Aleph, and I'm probably, this is ugly, but you know, hopefully it will get this done. So the Aleph in Hebrew stands for the number one. It's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the Aleph also has a numerical value of 1, and also it stands for the beginning. Okay. So God took the heavenly bodies, just like he said he would, to draw signs, not only in the beginning of creation, but also he's using these signs in Joel chapter 2, speaking of the end of the world as we know it. And the world is not going to end. All people not going to be gone off the world, but just the world as it is will end after the great and terrible day of the Lord. Then he will fix things that need to be fixed. So let's take a look at this. So the Aleph, which the combination of the, so here's the X, the first X right there. That's how it would look. The X that was made with the 2017 eclipse and the 2024. There's the X. But the I'm looking at this backwards here, excuse me. But the X, there was another eclipse that came and it made an A, the one in 2023. So its path to totality is like the shadow drew an A over America. It looks like kind of like that. So that stands for number one. Is the first, it's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it stands for the beginning. So listen to what I'm about to tell you. Tell you that God uses numbers, and we should not be afraid of numbers, because numbers won't bite you, because God put them here for us to use and understand. Because without these numbers, we are only humans, and we would not be able to understand any of this. So let me tell you this. So we had the X, which stands for 400. I've told you about that. We had the earthquake, 4.8 earthquake in New York at 400 years after New York had been founded. We know that the Black Americans crossed the milestone from being here from 1619 to 2019 was 400 regular Gregorian years that we've been here in America at that time. So you have those 400, but there's another 400. There's another 400. Let me show you. Because no matter how you look at this, okay, so right here, there's a 400. The X, the tab that the guy drew over America stands for 400. It has the tab stands for the end. It's the last letter. It has a numerical value of 400. And here you have the Aleph that was formed with the three eclipses. And right here, it stands for one. The first is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Well, that goes from 1 to 400. Right there, it's telling you 1, and then the 400 is 400. 0 to 400. You count that one, that's 400. There's another 400. Those are numbers that God uses. Why would people be uncomfortable using numbers that God gave us when God uses giving us all these numbers to show us that something prophetic and fantastic has happened in America? And it should not be overlooked because Bible prophecy has been happening in front of our eyes, whether we see it or not, and whether we choose to look at it or not. I say for people who want to be wise, you better look at these signs and see what they mean, because they mean something. Let me tell you something. But see, that's still not the only 400. For people who doubt that God will use numbers, well, how could anybody make any of this stuff up? All I'm doing is using the events that happened, that were written about in newspapers and on the news. Everybody can look at it. All I've done was read the scripture which God already gave us. And I'm connecting the dots that God gave us, that He gave us the formulas or the what we need to figure these things out here. So to see these things and ignore them and to say that I'm just not going to look at numbers, that would be foolishness, especially for people who love God, or people who's into Bible prophecy, or people who want to watch their behinds and figure out when it's going to break loose, when God's day of anger finally comes. We want to know when it's close. People's been looking for these signs for thousands of years, and they haven't happened till now in America, till now. A true person of God embrace these numbers. A true person of God will understand that everything that God does in the universe basically is dictated by numbers. Because if God was not the greatest mathematician in the universe, He couldn't create all these galaxies in the universe that spin, and they're predictable. People can mostly, unless there's something like a nova or something like that, or something smashes into it and disintegrates, whatever. But the God made the path of the earth, the moon, and the stars predictable. And He did that by using not just with His great power that we can never understand, but with his divine understanding of mathematics. Because without God could not have figured out, he could not have, without him using his whatever math he uses, he could not have figured out how to make everything so that everything moves in order in our solar system, in other solar systems, and in the earth galaxies, without bumping into each other. For the most part, sometimes there's asteroids or meteors that hit the earth. That's a different thing, okay? But I'm just saying, for the most, you understand what I'm saying. If there were no order in the things that God does that's dictated by time, if there were no order in the time that God does things, and there was no math involved, then none of these things would be impossible, even life itself. Because even life, to be able to form life, from the time that the egg touches the sperm, is numbers. We have a certain number of chromosomes. Whatever we get from the mother, I'm not an expert in this. Numbers. Our DNA, whatever the strands, how they're made, numbers. Cells, the way our cells are made, how many this and that's in the cells, how they're formed, all this, how many it needs to be in order for a cell to hold together. Numbers. So you see, a person who loves God, a person who is godly, will understand the importance of numbers and will understand the importance of these numbers that I've been telling that he's been giving us. And we need to open our eyes like, this got to, because those are not the only 400s. I showed you all those 400s. And I showed you that our people have been in this country. I showed you that we're the Israelites. Black people are the children of God. We've been in this country 400 years. All these 400s. It couldn't happen without God doing it. The Almighty Creator of the earth, Yahweh, is giving us these signs with numbers attached. Because if there were no numbers, how would we understand the signs? Don't be afraid of numbers. They will not bite you. The only numbers you should be afraid of is if you go and practice spiritism or something, divination or whatever, fortune telling or something like that God tells us not to do. Then you should be afraid of those numbers if you're getting them from spiritism but if you're using what God gave us and things that God causes to happen, then we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing. How can we look at the heavens? How we know when? How will we know our birthday without numbers? Our birthday is numbers. Your birthday happens on a certain number based on the numbers of the 365-day year calendar. I told you it means something. Black Americans are fulfilling Bible prophecy. People want to know why America is deteriorating. People want to know why judgment is coming. I'm telling you why. Because America took the children of God in those slave ships. They took the children of Israel and brought them, and they enslaved our people and oppressed us and tortured us and unalived our people. They were brutal to our women and all kinds of things, and even to our men. They assaulted our men and women, boys and girls. And even after slavery, it continued. The lynchings in the Jim Crow, the segregation, the mass incarcerations for the chain gangs, when our people were stopped and a lot of times didn't even do anything serious, but they used them for labor. They say, well, slavery's over, but we still gonna use your black behind. We still gonna work for free because we gonna put you in those chain gangs. I'm not talking for somebody who did something wrong and they did do so. I'm talking for people who did little or nothing for minor violations, and next thing they find themselves in the chain gangs. And just like so many of our people, it's after they spent 10, 20, 30, 40 years in prison and come to find out that they didn't even do what it was that they were accused of, and they spent all their young years in prison, innocent. God is going to punish people for that. And not just that, it comes out so many times that the prosecutors and the police had evidence that would have proved that the person didn't do it. It would have exonerated the person, but they still let the people go to prison knowing that they didn't do it, just to put another black body in the prisons. That's why God's judgment is coming. That's why he's sending the signs. Believe it or not, but who can deny the signs? I challenge anybody to go back and look at the things that I told you to look at. Go back and look and say if I'm saying anything that is not true, anything wrong. And our people have not been paid for the thing. Sure, I know there's people who says as soon as a black person says anything about reparations, I'm not giving them nothing. That's why. That's why America. That's why people they people who are not even immigrants here. There's people who voted to try to get them reparations who are not legal citizens entitled to get anything, and they tried to vote to get them reparations. And people who've gone through all this hell that our people have been put in America have been put through, and then they say we can't do it. We have to do a study. We don't know. We just did they do a study again, and then they come and say we can't give you reparations. And even if we could found that we should. We don't know how we would do it. But then they bring all these thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands, and give them reparations and everything. And even though they're not citizens and haven't done one day of slavery or oppression in this country, they hate us so much, they'd rather give people who not even a citizen, reparations than give it to us. That's why. And just like with the Somalians, that scam has been uncovered where they gave them where they showed them how to cheat the state, how to cheat people out the system out of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, maybe billions, I don't know, but millions and millions with fake business. They showed them how to do it, and they knew they were doing it and let them do it with fake businesses, and they got paid for businesses in the buildings that did not even have businesses in them. And they rather give it to them, people who never done any slavery or been oppressed in this country. That's hatred. That's why God is punishing. That's why he's showing all these signs. This is not a joke. This is for real. Yahweh's coming back. God is coming back to settle this stuff. Then, no, I'm not done. Then all of a sudden you look up, and you know, this is President Trump. He's different, and that's why God is using him. But even President Trump, he looked out for his people. He said he wants reparations for the January 6th riot. Well, he calls them protesters or people. What he calls them. And he's serious. I don't know yet if people are going to get him, but some people protested and they sued to block it. But that's reparations. But you ask the same people that black people should get reparations for all the hell that the people in America has put us through, and they will say no. You say even the word reparations, they won't have a fit for anybody else like they would for black. I ain't giving them nothing. They don't deserve nothing. That's why. That is why. And I'm just being nice, saying that as nice as I could. There's a lot of stuff I could say, but I will not. But I have to tell the truth. Why would I come on here and lie when God called me to tell the truth? And I'm telling you why these signs are happening. I'm telling you because about 400 years. Let me tell you something. I told you there's more signs for 400. Let me show you. Excuse me 1 second. Let me do something. I'll be right back. Don't move. I want to show you something fantastic. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So anyway, So where was I? So yeah. So brother Israel said the Most High won't let them give reparations, my friend, Deuteronomy 28:29. Well, I realized that these things will not happen, and it's the Most High who will cause it to happen. But still, it's happening to our people. That should not be ignored. Though I do know not to expect I know not to expect reparations. Those of us who know the scriptures, yet because it's going to be God who does it. But so I want to show you something. I'll do that and then I'll look up Deuteronomy 28:29. I don't remember. I know I've seen it, but I just don't remember it at this time. So not only is so we done our 400 years, the X that the eclipse made over America stands for 400. There was a 4.8 earthquake before the 4/8/24 eclipse that happened in New York. It was felt in the tri-state area, which was unusual. And it was at a time when New York had been it had been 400 years since New York had been created during that time. Right. And that happened to be very close. And that happened right the week before the eclipse. So then, but guess what? In order for an eclipse to be made, okay, the eclipses are very special. And to show you that God uses mathematics, he even made those to give a sign. He made the sign. Now listen to me now. Listen to me. God formed the sun and the moon exactly with the distances that they are from the earth, also to fulfill Bible prophecy. Even the sun and the moon are showing numbers that support this 400 years. Why? Because in order for the total solar eclipse to happen, the sun has to be 400 times away. How can I say this? The sun has to be 400 times farther away from the earth than the moon. You understand? So in order for that to happen, in order for that to happen, it's no accident. But it's not just that the sun has for a total solar eclipse to happen, for the light to be blocked out, for that to happen, but also that the sun is also 400 times larger than the moon. It's 400 times larger than the moon. So there, within the eclipse, the actual sun and the moon themselves, we're seeing the 400 play out. 400 again. If somebody can prove me wrong or tell me that something that proves that is something else besides what I'm saying. Now, all this happened after Black Americans have been in this country. It's after 2019, after our 400 years. So when you find out that Black people, okay, so let's just assume, okay, let's assume that there's people here who don't know we're the Israelites, which there may not be. There may be. I like to use this book. I show it in repetition. It's not the only one, but it's easy to read. It's understandable. And it's a good, very good start. It's called The Hebrew Heritage of Black Africa, written by a European Jew named Stephen Jacobs. And he tells the truth. Okay. Now, the front page, let me read the back. A Hebrew history, and it's very reasonable too. I believe this says $16. I believe it was $16 that I paid for it. I recommend it for people who want to know this truth. So, the Hebrews, Israelites of biblical times, Who and where are their descendants today? Stephen S. Jacobs, a European Jew and historian, tells like it was in this documentary, which proves conclusively that most people of African descent living in America and the other parts of the Western Hemisphere as a result of the African slave trade, 1517 to 1808, are offspring of the ancient Israelites. Jacobs quotes an eminent eyewitness anthropologists, archaeologists, professors, and historians. Well, let me, okay, we got that part. Let me go, and I don't want to make it too long, but I just want to show people the basics because a lot of people don't know this, still don't know this. In the foreword, it says, Stephen S. Jacobs, a European Jew. Now, just understand why this is so important to understand he's a European Jew. Because he has no reason to bring out this truth in order, unless just the fact that he wants to want people to know the truth. In other words, there's no ulterior motive. You see what I'm saying? Because he is a European Jew. But listen to what he says. Stephen S. Jacobs, a European Jew, has beyond the shadow of a doubt fully documented in this book the Hebrew heritage of Black Africa, that the Hebrews, Jews of biblical times, were of the Black race and lived on the African and Asian Middle East region continents of the world. This book is a must read for people of all races and belief systems, for it satisfies the need to dispel the lies which have enveloped the minds of the masses into believing that the white European Jews are the original people of the book and the chosen people of God, expressed throughout the Bible. More and more white Jews, especially the older ones, are acknowledging in secret to those of us who already know that the original Jews were Black. Okay. Scores of authors, Black and white, have now written extensively over the last 50 or more years on the subject of the presence of Black Hebrew Israelites, not only on the continents of Africa and Asia, but other continents as well. Some of these Hebraic people are descendants of the originals, and all of our people, let me tell you, about every last one, most of the vast majority of the people sitting over here was Israelites. And that's been proven with DNA. Okay, and now thousands and thousands more have returned to the worship of Almighty God of their forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, after having been forced in time past to embrace other religions through foreign colonizations. So he admits, the author of this book admits that white European Jews in private, the older ones, are confessing and telling that to each other that the original Jews were Black. And Black Americans are that race. Okay, it is hoped that after reading this and other books on the subject, millions more of African ancestry will not only agree with the contents, but will also make an informed decision to reclaim and practice the way of life ordained by the Creator. Yahweh, his name is Yahweh, through his holy prophets. The Most High is working his will through preachers, teachers, and authors to bring back his people who have gone astray. Say to them, return unto me, for I have redeemed thee. Okay. So understand right here, this is telling the truth. So when you read the Bible prophecy, Genesis chapter 15, verses 12 and 13, where God tells Father Abraham that his descendants would go to a land that's not theirs, and they would they would serve or be enslaved and afflicted or enslaved and oppressed. There they would serve for 400 years. Okay. That is us. It's us. It's us. So let me let me read this, and then I'll be in with this. I'm over with this book. So the bias in our knowledge. Wait a minute. Let me go to the second paragraph. Excuse me. The history of Israel has been handed down to us mostly from white scholars. As a result, the emphasis has been put on what ties Europe and the Europeans to the Middle East. The possibility of a relationship between Black Africa and the Middle East is rarely mentioned. The bias in our knowledge of history runs deep. It is reflected, for example, by the fact that little space is devoted to the historic and theological kinship between Christianity and so called pagan Greco Roman religions of 2,000 years ago. It is also reflected by the fact that relatively few books deal with the non Hebraic ancestry of most white Jews. So I messed that up. It is also reflected by the fact that relatively few books deal with the non Hebraic ancestry of most white Jews who are descendants of Greeks, Romans, Armenians, Berbers, and others who adopted or converted to Judaism during the period of its greatest expansion in the Mediterranean area before the Christian era began. Okay, so this shows that he's saying that the people who white Jews, people who know as white Jews, are actually of Greek, Roman, Armenian, and Berber heritage, and other, I think, Germanic and Russian and Bulgarian. And that's true because now let me tell you something. A lot of Ashkenazi or Jews, they've been coming forward and they've been taking DNA tests. And they've been saying online, if you don't believe me, look this up. They've been saying that they did a DNA test and it shows they have no Semitic blood or no blood that ties them to the Middle East. And it says that their blood, they're European. Their blood shows them to be related to the other Europeans. Okay. And there's some people who are shocked by it. There are some people who are very upset about it. And they're going off. They're like, well, I got tested and I'm not even a Middle Eastern person. I'm a white European. And it raises questions. And it's some people is changing their minds about things. And it's making them look ironically, DNA testing is illegal in Israel. So no single book can deal exhaustively with any subject so that every facet and opinion is recorded therein. Our book is no exception. It is not written to rehash old viewpoints and biases. It is not to rewrite, it's not the rewrite of white history in Europe or the Middle East. Our purpose, among others, is to redress what we believe is a long-standing imbalance in the presentation of Black history. We want to introduce you and every reader to a part of Black history which cannot be found in the standard texts and treatises on the subject. Black Americans are in a position as never before in modern history to rediscover and reclaim, if they wish, a heritage which has profoundly influenced world history and mankind, the Hebrew heritage of West Africa. The Hebrew heritage of West Africa. Why does he say the Hebrew heritage of West Africa? Because the West Africans that Black Americans, the slaves in all other places like Jamaica and in the Caribbean, Brazil and all that Central America, that our people, the West Africans we were taken from, are the biblical Hebrews. That may surprise some people. I said, yes, it was the biblical Hebrews or the Israelites that were brought to the Americas on the slave ships. They took the children of God. And that's why judgment is falling upon this nation. That's the real truth. That's why it's deteriorating in many ways. Now, let me say this again. I'll speak for me and most black people I know. We have a love. Well, we love America in a way because it's our home. It's the only home we've ever known. We've had our lives here. All the joys and the blessings we've had have been on this land. And you will not find, not me personally. I don't hate America. I love it as far as my home. It's my home, and I appreciate the blessings that it has. Okay, but our blessings, the blessing of Black Americans, came a bit different than a lot of other people's blessings, because our people had to fight for every inch from slavery to survive the horrors of that and the things that have been happening, all the lynchings and unalivings and oppression and terrorizing our people riding on horses with white sheets on their head, terrorizing our people at night, burning crosses, unaliving our people, men, women, children. They had no mercy even after the slaves were freed after the Civil War. When our people had nowhere to go, but they were unaliving our people. Many thousands of our people died from exposure and starvation and unaliving. Why? Because if you're a slave and you've always been a slave, and the only place you knew is the place where you were enslaved at, that was where you lived, and then you're free. Where do you go? You have nowhere to go. You're lost. You're like a fish without water. And so other nations have had challenges in life, yeah, but they haven't had that. So all these numbers, like I'm saying, I've been warning people because let me tell you, even with the sun and the moon, the distances from the earth are being dictated by the number 400. 400 numbers are dictating all of this stuff, God's numbers and mathematics. Who would guess that there's a 400-year prophecy? And then, even with the eclipse, for the eclipse to happen, that the sun must be 400 times larger than the moon. And for a total solar eclipse to happen, the sun must be 400 times farther away from the earth than the moon. People, that's huge. And God is using those numbers to show us something huge has happened in this time period that we're in. And even the date, like I said, the date of the April 8th, 2024 total solar eclipse, 4/8. What is God telling us? There's 48 states in the continental United States. Within the main part of North America, we also Hawaii is a state, but it's out in the Pacific. And there's Alaska, but Alaska is up on the top northwestern end of Alaska's the top northwestern end of Canada, way up there at the end, way up there. And so also the fact that the modern nation of Israel was formed in 1948. And what we see going on, let me tell you now, Could be. I don't know what's going to happen, nor do I make predictions that I don't know. But I'll tell you this, that the signs that God has given us, because I warned people earlier this year, even before this year, but specific signs that I told you that America, God's judgment is falling upon America and Israel, and that judgment will fall on these nations, that things are going to happen that never happened before. And the war in Iran could literally be part of Bible prophecy. Because I speak of blood moons, this last blood moon happened on March the 2nd and 3rd of 2026. The blood moon happened on yet another biblical holiday, because this has been unique because the blood moons have been falling. They fall on biblical holidays, which also shows that God is using numbers as well in order for it to be perfect order for these blood moon eclipses to fall on the biblical or Jewish holidays. Well, this blood moon fell on Purim. And Purim is a celebration that the Israelites had in the Bible, where they escaped from the Persians. They escaped the being destroyed from the Persians. And guess who the Persians are? They're the blood moon happened on Purim, a day where the Israelites celebrating being saved from the Persian army. Now the U.S. is fighting, in the modern state of Israel, are fighting the Iranians at the same time when there's a blood moon where that had to do with fighting the Iranians. You can't make this stuff up. And the fact that right around that time, now there's been a slight increase in fireball sightings or meteor sightings, gradual stage escalation. Then it went up a little bit, but when it got to 2026, it went from here and it jumped up there to like 2,000 and something sightings. I mean, it was a massive increase in sightings in the beginning of March of this year, of huge, like big fireballs that are exploding because they're big, and they're making sounds that people can hear miles around. And so many people are reporting these large fireballs, not just in America, but all over the world. And so there's something happening all at the same time. There's been an increase in March. What is God trying to tell us? There's a message here. I don't know exactly yet, or if I will know. But I know that God has tried to warn us that something is near. Also, it's come out that there's also been, since that same time period, an increase in bear attacks, like grizzly bears and black bears. If you don't believe me, look it up. It's around the same time now. There's been an increase in bear attacks in the United States, but different parts of the world, and especially Japan as well. Bears that people didn't think of being able to unalive people have now unalived people in Japan. Look it up if you don't believe me. Why is there an increase in bear attacks? Why? And this is happening all at the same time, where fireballs are coming down now in an increased number, larger. Oh, that's not all. Those are numbers, you see, no matter how you look at this. Now, let me tell you this, because the numbers are whatever reason that God had these things escalate in March has to do with God's mathematics or his numbers. I don't have a full understanding, of why, but it's happening. Also, recently there's been an increase of larger asteroids getting close to Earth, near Earth asteroids. Look it up if you haven't heard it. Big ones, pretty big, like big enough you don't want them to hit the Earth. And they're passing between. You know how they're close? Because they're passing between the moon and the Earth. And so with these larger fireballs, that has led to, I've seen researchers and experts in those fields, they were had the question, is this a predictor of even something bigger coming into Earth? Perhaps a fireball, or perhaps or a meteor, perhaps an asteroid. What is this? What is this increase for? Yes, there's normally an increase in springtime, they said, but not this much. And not with these, it's not so much of how many, but it's the number of large fireballs, the number of meteor. And then sometimes, I think video or two that I've looked at, they don't look like normal meteors. Like, normally the fireballs, they come in, or the meteors, they have a tail, and they don't slow down. They speed up. They go fast. They go fast. There was one I remember in particular that it came in, it had no tail. It was a fireball. It had no tail. And instead of speeding up as it fell to the earth, or instead of its speed maintaining itself, it did something that meteors don't do. It slowed down. Explain that. So that was like, so when the man, he was looking at it, he was like, well, I don't know what to call this. It should be, it should be able to call it a meteor, but we don't understand why it's not acting like a meteor. And all this is happening after a time when the 3I Atlas comet came through came into our, it's an interstellar object. I think it's the third interstellar object that came from somewhere else to our to the galaxy that they know of. And 3I Atlas was doing crazy things. I think it's still doing crazy things even to this time. It had people scared because they didn't understand how a comet could be doing the things that 3I Atlas was doing. And it's going very fast. Even changed directions one time. I know at least once. And comets never do that, they said. Never. It had people speculating that there's a power that did that, perhaps as a sign. Also, meteors usually, when they go, there's a jet that trails behind them. Not a jet, but there's a tail that comes. When comets go, there's usually a tail that flows behind them. Okay, so the comet goes that way and the tail flows back. If I remember correctly, the 3I Atlas comet, I do remember correctly, its tail reversed directions and faced to the front. And it had people tripping out like, this doesn't happen. We don't see, how can the tail, if the comet is going this way, how in the world can the tail reverse directions and go forward this time? And go forward. But see, these are weird things that's been happening. And they have specific dates. And guess what? They're all in God's mathematics. And God is dictating these things, whether we know it or not. These things are happening by numbers. And then the 3I Atlas was having different jets and things come out different ways. It's not made. They thought at one time they were seeing what was going to happen when it got around the sun, but it didn't melt or anything. And let me tell you this too. It was changing some kind of weird colors, they said, that was unusual. like a green or something, or it was changing. It was some weird colors. It was doing a lot of weird things that comets don't do. But so those things. Then at a certain date, there was some signals, some, what do you call them? I want to say outside the galaxy that came in. It was some signals. Are they called radio? I'm sorry, but what I'm saying is they had rhythms, and the way that they were coming in, I saw a man, he's a scientist, or he's a researcher on this. He's an expert, but he says he believes that it's a message, that something that God is trying to send. There's a message, because these patterns are deliberate. Every so often, these patterns were happening. Are those not signs in the heavens too? And all these things are happening back to back to back. Didn't Joel chapter 2 tell us? Didn't it say, it says, indeed, it says, Joel chapter 2, verse 30, as I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth. Aren't those wonders in the heavens and the earth? You're having these things that never happened before, comets that's doing crazy stuff. It literally had people scared, like crying scared, like very frightened. And it led to speculation of being an alien ship. There's people worried that it was coming to Earth, that was going to Disney. There was so many speculations, but no matter what, and then there was times when they just cut it off. They were showing where it was, and at one time, the government just cut it off. Did you hear about that? So nobody could see it. Why? Why? And what did it mean? There's also been speculation that the tail from this meteor from 3I Atlas, that the particles as it goes through the galaxy, that maybe those particles are some of the fireballs that we've been seeing. Though that has been proven, it's a theory, or people think that maybe that could be the possibility, but we don't know that. But God sent that thing into our solar system, and that 3I Atlas comet. He did it for a reason, and it's ironic that it happened before. A few months before March, the closest the closest that it got to Earth, I think was it on December the 19th, 2025? I think it was, or somewhere around there. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, but its closest approach was in December. And then a few months later, all this stuff, fireball and all this crazy stuff is happening. Then, you see, all these things are numbers. You don't think that God is using numbers, mathematics, when he brought these things that's happening, especially since after the blood moon eclipse, and all these things are happening, like these things, since the beginning of March? Why? What is God trying to tell us? But the Bible already said, it warned us. You got to go back, because it's matching. See, that's the thing about it that's getting me, is there's so many things that have been happening, especially recently, that the Bible that could be. I don't know that I'm just saying what's happening, and I'm letting people know what I see. I'm warning people, and if I'm wrong, or how can I say it? I never told nobody what is going to happen. You understand? I'm just seeing things, and I'm making a connection. And I'm putting out the warning, like the watchman puts out the warning. I'm putting out the warning. And if it's nothing, then good. I mean, then fine, it's nothing. But if it is something, then the warning is out there. I don't think that all these things can be nothing. Not to mention, then all of a sudden, we had some volcanoes that never exploded in human history. Now, listen to me now. We had a couple of volcanoes that never exploded, have never erupted in human history. Some people say since before mankind was even on the earth. And especially since recorded history. And now, two of them have erupted that they didn't even think would erupt. That's never erupted in human history. Why is all this happening? Where the time or the math, the numbers are in close proximity to each other, where all these things are happening. What made these two sleeping giants? What made these two volcanoes, after being dormant for the history of man on this earth, up and erupt now? I'm saying the math doesn't lie. And what is math? When we look at math, it's numbers. And the numbers aren't lying. The numbers are telling that something's going on. What it is and exactly how it's going to happen, but I don't know. And then for people who don't know this, I mean, I write stuff because it's hard for me. It's hard to remember certain things, but I remember. I just don't remember the names. I know what happened. Let me see if I can find. So if people want to look it up. Okay, so it's the sleeping volcanoes are waking up. That was I watched Ray. If you haven't looked at well, I don't know if he wants me to mention his name. But anyway, it's the one that the Haley Gubby volcano or Haley Gubi volcano in Ethiopia's a far region. Okay, it began erupting November the 23rd, 2025. Okay, now it was dormant. It had never erupted. Okay, and I remember it said that it was the first time it erupted in human history. And it hasn't erupted in 12,000 years. And now, and guess what? Guess what else was happening around this time of November the 23rd of 2025? This 3-eye atlas was coming and having people worried. At that same time, 3-eye atlas was in our galaxy or solar system. Why? What's God trying to tell us? And then also, now, ironically, this dormant volcano that awakened after 12,000 years, they say. Ironically, it was across from the Erta El volcano, which is the most active volcano in the world. So, in the same place in Ethiopia, you have one volcano that's dormant, that's never erupted in human history. Then you have another one that's across from it a bit of a distance, but they're across from each other. You have one that's dormant, never erupted, and then you have one on the other side, which is the most active volcano in the world. Isn't that something? Then there's the Mount Kuprianov of the Alaskan Peninsula. And it has never been active in human history. It has been a dormant volcano. And it's giving plumes of smoke. That's all that would come up. But now the question was asked, why did it go from a dormant volcano, and into a few months it went into it had an unassigned status before, and then within a few months it's now a yellow volcano, or an advisory that they're watching. It moved from a phase 1 volcano to a phase 6 in the matter of a few months. A volcano never that has never erupted in human history. So all these things, and you got volcanoes that's never erupted in human history happening at the same time. There's these increasing fireballs, and I think when, if I'm not mistaken, the Mount Kupriyanov wrote erupted in February of 2026. What is going on? What's going on? But I'll tell you this: it's all God's order. It's all numbers. It's all math, all mathematics. Which in the end of it, everything, all the is that the order of the things that God has put in place that we see are dictated from the galaxy, from the stars, the heavenly bodies, to the earth is controlled. Even the years is controlled by numbers. God's mathematics, which are so fantastic that no human can ever understand how fantastic God's mathematics and the numbers that He's using, how fantastic they really are. So, that's all I know. Well, that's not all I know, but I'm saying that's what I have now. Excuse me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay. Be right back. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to step away for a second. But are there oh, but what I'm going to do, I didn't get to discuss I didn't discuss what really this video was going to be about. Really, because there I want to show some different signs from God. So I'll come back maybe tomorrow and do and show, more of show something else. Because I have something fantastic. There's a lot of signs that I'm seeing. I just want to share with people. And especially at the times we're in. Let me know if there are any questions or comments. Um, but guys, with all these things happening, I don't know. I have no ability unless God would show me. But to see into the future, okay? Unless it's God's will and He does it. But I think something's about to happen. I think God is about to do something very big that most people will not be expecting to happen. You know, y'all, these signs, because why would God show us all these signs and all these things happen unless it's warning us of something? These things are not random and they're not without meaning. God is trying to warn us. So at the end of the day, I encourage people to follow God, the God of the Bible, the living God, the creator, Almighty Yahweh of the Old Testament. Okay. And why do I say that? Because God's name is Yahweh. Now, why do I keep telling people that to follow Yahweh? Because because he said that in the Bible it says there's a verse that says the name of Yahweh is a strong tower, and to it the righteous run and are saved. I also recommend a Bible like what I use, the World English Bible, because Yahweh's name is supposed to be in the Old Testament over Yahweh's name is supposed to be in the Old Testament over 6,800 times. And you need a Bible with Yahweh's name in there to understand what the Bible is truly telling us. And once you see Yahweh's name in there over 6,800 times, you begin to understand that everything is all about Yahweh. He's the creator. He was the one who created everything in the beginning. And it's Yahweh who's going to end the things that need to be ended in the end or before the great day of the Lord. Because with all those signs that God said was going to happen in the last days, I got to go back to this because this is all connected. He didn't just give us the signs of that the day of the Lord is near. He gave us the signs, and then look what he said. Look what is told. It says in Joel chapter 2, verse 30. I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood, fire, pillars of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. It will happen that whoever will call on Yahweh's name shall be saved. So right there is it, right there. It's telling us what people have to do to be saved. Now I'm just saying, to have his favor, okay? Now, what I'm saying is understand that Yahweh's name, that God's name is not a title, it's his personal name. And when Uncle Moses, or how you say grandfather Moses, when he asked God what name should he give to the Israelites to tell who he is, the name that was given to Moses from God was Yahweh. Okay, his name Yahweh, and that was his name. Now, God, Lord, Heavenly Father, the Almighty Creator, those all apply to God. And yes, he is all those things. Those are not his name. His name is Yahweh. Just like for people, you may be somebody's friend, you may be somebody's father, you may be their employee, you may be a volunteer, or you may be whatever it is, but none of those things are your name. They're just titles that are indicative of something or things that you're doing or roles that you play. And it's the same thing for God, but even more so. But it's of limitless importance when it comes to God, because God Almighty, he's the creator, he's the one, he's everything. He's the one who gave us our life. It's Almighty Yahweh who blesses us, and it's Almighty Yahweh who punishes us as well. And so when the Bible says this several times, it says to whoever to call on his name. If I were you, now I'm going to call on his name. Some people love his name. I know people, I love Yahweh's name. I'm going to call his name. It's up to the person, but to be safe for people who want to be in good with God, follow the commandments, and some of the laws and things may be able to follow here, but some things can't do because we're in another nation. We have to follow the laws of the nation. Another thing too, some of the we're not supposed to be sacrificing and stuff like that, animals and all that, because there's not a priesthood. Certain things, certain celebrations we're not supposed to do until there's a priesthood. So we be out of line. We if to do so. So the main things is the commandments, to follow the commandments, and that are in Exodus chapter 20. And like I said, if it says to call on his name, to call on God Yahweh's name, I'm gonna do it. Let's look at this one more time. The sun will be turned into darkness. Is that an eclipse? I don't know. I'm just saying now. Is that a total solar eclipse when the sun is darkened out? The moon will be turned into blood. Are those blood moon lunar eclipses? Before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. Okay, those things will happen. It will happen that, and also recently there's been a blood moon when right here in March the 2nd and 3rd, when all these increase in large fireballs and meteors have been hugely increased in the United States and the earth. There was that the blood moon eclipse loose has broken in excuse my language, in Iran with the Israel and US. And Iran is, I don't know if you're keeping up, but Iran is they're putting a hurting on the US and Israel. It's good to keep up. Look at foreign forces. I'm saying they're I don't think that people expect it to happen the way it's expecting. So I don't know if something's going to come out of all of this, even with the war in Iran, but something's going to happen. I'm telling you, something's going to happen. President Trump is going to do something. Listen to what I'm telling you. God put President Trump in that office again, a second time, especially President Trump, because he was the type of person he wanted in there to bring judgment upon America and perhaps other nations as well. So that's about, I don't know. That's what I have right now. And thank you for watching, all who's here. What I would just take what I'm trying to tell you, because I'm going to change the title of this thing. But these warnings, pay attention to the signs and the guides. There's mathematics that he's using. He uses things, numbers and things to warn us. He's a God of order. And I just encourage you to take what I'm saying very seriously. Any questions? I'll tell you one last thing. One day the world is going to know that the people, that Black Americans, that we're the children of God. And the race known as Negroes all over the world, the Bantu people in Africa, the West Africans, there are hundreds of millions of us of the children of God in sub-Saharan Africa alone, not including the millions and hundreds of millions of us that are hundreds that are in the Americas, such as Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, in Guyana, in Suriname, in Venezuela. Our people were sent into slavery in all these nations: Colombia, Panama, El Salvador, Costa Rica, the Caribbean islands. The Black people that's there that were sent into slavery are the Israelites, the children of God. I'm just warning people. The Jamaicans, you love Jamaica. People like to visit the Jamaicans. They're cool. They got a cool. The Jamaicans are the children of God. Black Afro-Cubans are Israelites. The Haitians are Israelites. Any questions? Any comments? You're welcome now before this ends. Any questions or comments? Because guess what? I don't know everything. Any questions or comments? Who's still here? Any questions or comments? Okay. If there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and end this. Thank you for coming, for watching, and you're welcome here. People of all races, ethnicities, backgrounds, languages, it doesn't matter. And all people don't, just because I have my channel named Black People Are the Chosen Israelites of God, it doesn't mean that all people aren't welcome. It's just I'm getting the message out, the truth out, okay? And there's blessings for anybody who wants to attach themselves to God, to Yahweh. So peace and blessings. Y'all take care, okay? Be well. Blessing to you. Bye.